Fair Housing Alliance. I am Diane Cipollone, the Director of Training at NFHA, and our presentation will begin in just a few moments. If you are having any trouble hearing the audio, please check whether or not you are have pressed the phone button or the microphone button for your computer, depending on which mode that you chose. We'll be waiting 2 more minutes and then we'll start the presentation. Thank you for joining us. This is Diane Cipollone, the Director of Training at the National Fair Housing Alliance, headquartered in Washington, D.C. I'd like to introduce our presenter for today's webinar, Effective Education and Outreach Strategies. Our presenter is Shanna Smith, who is the President and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance. Shanna, if you're ready, you can advance your slides.
Well, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. I especially want to welcome the HUD partners who are on the call. I'm so glad the government reopened today and you all can be back at work. This presentation today is going to cover some of the issues that we have to address when we're doing media outreach and education and outreach. It certainly isn't going to have every single idea that we could think of in here. So if people are willing, following this webinar, if you have additional ideas or groups that you reach out to, if you send Cheryl Frost Brown and Diane an email, we'll add that to the presentation so people will be able to have even more information. So how to have an impact. This is a few ideas, and it's certainly not everything in the universe. But the first thing is, what knowledge do you really have about your local area? Too often when we're at Fair Housing School, we talk to people who really aren't familiar with the demographics in their own area. And the first question we always ask is, who are you trying to reach? Clearly and obviously, we're trying to reach members of the protected groups in federal, state, and local laws. Journalists and reporters are our next group, and politicians. It's very important to reach out to the politicians because these guys control the community development block grant funds, general operating funds, that can help support your organization. Whenever we do anything, we also do it in the way that the community watching what we're doing, listening to us, seeing public service announcements, are all potential jurors. And this, doing an excessive amount of education and outreach, gives you an opportunity to educate those jurors, likewise educating judges. Many groups already reach out to law enforcement people, and we'll talk about that and look further as we move forward. Clearly, neighborhood advocates, and I have diversity advocates, and I separate them because some neighborhood advocates advocate against integration. They advocate against receipt of Section 8 vouchers in apartment complexes in their areas. And clearly, because school boards have standing to sue under the Fair Housing Act, we should do a lot more outreach to the local schools. And then obviously, we do outreach to apartment owners, real estate companies, lenders, underwriters, appraisers, and all those groups working in the homeowners insurance and mortgage insurance business. What are we trying to communicate when we do education and outreach? Regardless of the group you're addressing, you have to figure out how to attack all of these issues that are important. And the way you present it can be very different to the composition of the audience with whom you're speaking. So we really do want to talk to people about the economic, educational, emotional harm that we know is caused by housing discrimination. At the same time, we want to talk and promote the benefits of inclusive communities and residential diversity. And then when we're talking with the business community, we often talk about the global community and the impact of growing up in segregated neighborhoods that has on hiring people. So where do you begin? What's your local knowledge? How well do you know your service area? And do you really know the history of your community? Most of the fair housing advocates have a great deal of information about rental properties. But I wonder how many of the fair housing centers actually join the apartment association, get their newsletter, are invited to speak at the local apartment association, as well as the statewide apartment association. In the sales arena, as a fair housing movement, we have to do better. And knowledge in that is often learned by having a cooperative real estate agent come in and train your staff about how the process works in your community, because it's not exactly the same in every city or every state. In lending, what we used to do is ask a bank if our staff could attend the loan origination officer training. And we said to them, let us attend so that we don't bring unmeritorious complaints. Let us attend so we understand how the loan origination process works. You also ought to have people attend appraisal courses at the local university. If you're going to talk as the education coordinator of an organization about what the organization is doing, you need to be familiar with the underwriting guidelines of Fannie, Freddie, FHA, or the local banks. Mortgage insurance is a little more complicated, but their underwriting guidelines are also available online. Most fair housing centers have had to address foreclosure practices and loan modification issues. And then what we're doing now at the national level is addressing the bank-owned foreclosures or real estate-owned properties. But if you're going to be knowledgeable and credible in front of the industry as well as community groups, you have to understand how these particular industries work. In homeowners insurance, if you own a home, you have some knowledge about what policies are, but the practices, you may want to read NAFA's past insurance investigations to understand about discriminatory policies and practices. I always ask, is your city or metro area segregated? Because if you start out with saying it is segregated, you get some pushback from people in the audience. So you want to just say, is it segregated? Where do you go to get that information? And you guys will get copies of the slide presentation following it so you can see the websites that we use. How do you illustrate residential segregation? We start with these maps because it tells the audience, it shows the audience clearly, first of all, that residential segregation exists. Too many politicians and residents and people even in the industry don't believe that their community is segregated, particularly if they have one or two Latino or African American or Asian Americans living in their community. So a good map is really worth 1,000 words. I'm going to show you some maps that are good, a little confusing, and how you can illustrate segregation in a way that will attract the attention of the media. Everything you create, you should try to do it in a way that the media can use it. And you have to have high quality photographs, high quality files that you're using. One of the things I learned with professional map makers is that they use muted colors. A lot of them will use a tan and brown and yellow, and that's not strong enough and vibrant enough to depict how serious the segregation is. And oftentimes, professional map makers will color the predominantly white areas in as yellow. And so you're looking at a map and you don't really see white-black segregation. Maps oftentimes have too much information. You have to think about the colors that you're using when you're illustrating segregation. Some people want to just use pin dots or geocoding. And then in communities like Westchester and in rural counties where you still have segregation, it's very difficult to show it by census tract, and oftentimes the school data is much more powerful. So what is effective and what is confusing? This map was the first map a demographer made for us in the metropolitan Chicago area. And you can tell by the legend, one dot equaled 100 people. And so the white dots are supposed to be representing white people and the black dots black people. But it's a little confusing. We asked the demographer to make another map just using dots for everybody, for all African Americans. And so on the map on the right, you can see where the concentration of African Americans are. Then we asked him to overlay where the offices were located of this particular real estate company. And so you can see that with the red stars. Finally, we asked the demographer to illustrate where the racial steering occurred. And the green dots were dots of condos that were shown to whites. And the yellow dots are dots of homes that were showing to African Americans. So there you can see a lot more green dots and green dots in predominantly white areas. But I don't think any one of these three maps was most effective. This is a map of metropolitan Detroit, the city of Detroit, and the dark blue line going straight across is 8 Mile Road. So this map was much more powerful in showing the segregation, keeping the white areas white, the African American areas bright red. And again, we use the green and yellow dots in the series of sales investigations to show green are homes that white people were shown, and yellow are homes that African Americans were shown. And so here you're able to illustrate the segregation, and then the corner of the map shows how many whites were shown so many more homes than African Americans. And you can see only one African American is shown a home in a predominantly white area. This map was very powerful with the local media. currently, we make our own maps. We don't use demographers anymore to make our maps. And the question is, can you put too much information on there? And if you have a lot of information, how do you appropriately depict it? What colors do you use? You know, green is a positive color, blues are positive colors, and then you get into the reds and darker colors, and that draws your attention to it to say, oh, is this an area where the problem exists? So here you see we use red when we're showing the foreclosures owned by U.S. Bank in Baton Rouge in the African American community. And people should be able to look at a map, look at the legend, and figure things out fairly easily. We wondered the same map against Bank of America in Atlanta. Atlanta is hyper-segregated. And we had an original map with the dots on it, and then we had new evidence to add to it. And we decided that the new evidence would be these bold blue stars. And when you look at it, it pops out that the discrimination and the problem continues in the same African American neighborhoods. This is a map that's been created, and I put the website up there. They call these the best race demographic maps in the country. This is just showing you where people live. The blue dots illustrate one-for-one of whites. The green dots are African Americans. Asian Americans are red. Latinos are orange, and all others are brown. This is the metropolitan Atlanta area. This is Chicago using the same map. I like these maps if you're just going to be discussing with your community how segregation looks, who lives where. And it's a nice soft illustration with colors of the segregation in the area. And because it used streets, people can look at that and go, oh, I live here. I didn't know. I thought my neighborhood was integrated. And they'll look at it again and see what the community really looks like. And clearly here, you can see the red dots, how the Asian American community in Chicago is just concentrated, as well as the whites, the African Americans, the Latinos. Everybody seems to be highly segregated in the Chicago metro area. When we were doing these investigations in the Long Island area, Nassau County, and in Westchester County, we found that using the census didn't depict the steering as clearly as using information from the school districts. And when you look at this map, what we did is outline all the school districts, and we put in the racial composition in those school districts. So the white areas are 0 to 20% white. The pink area is 20 to 30%, and then it gets more and more concentrated. So again, we were using the green and yellow dots of where African Americans and white people were shown homes. So this map is very stark about racial steering based on the school district. We did the same thing in Westchester County, and even though you don't see the dots on here, Tarrytown was primarily Latino, and the whites were steered here, and the Latinos who asked for homes here were steered here. So, but you can get this data from that website about the public schools. What we also did in talking about schools, because when you talk about public schools, you have all of these stereotypes about the success of the schools. And the real estate agents in Tarrytown told white people, you don't really want to be in the Tarrytown school district. They're not that good. Yet they told the Latino testers, you'll love Tarrytown. The home prices are great. The schools are great. So we did a little research and found the statistics from the Tarrytown schools. And when you have something so positive, you want to make sure the media grabs onto it and that they use it in your story. Plus, when you think of the white folks who live in these areas, they're having stereotypes about Tarrytown. And when you do education out here, you can talk about the positive evidence that you have from the records in Tarrytown. So we had good maps, and a really good picture is worth 1,000 words. We talk about the impact that we would have on these groups of people with color-coded maps and showing pictures of the apartments and quotes from testers. When the National Fair Housing Alliance works with the local new fair housing organizations, we do audit testing. And we actually use photographs of the apartment complexes where we found discrimination. And below that, we'll put some of the quotes from the test reports. So, for example, it might say, a tester on this in June went to this apartment complex. The African-American tester was told nothing was available. The white tester the next day was shown 3 apartments. So instead of just giving out the statistical information, you're giving the media and the viewers something to look at. It was this apartment complex who did it, so it's not just something that no one can identify with. We also try to put a lot of information on our PowerPoint slides or our PDF slides, because once that slide is out there, you never know how someone's going to use it, in context or out of context. So if you have information on the slide, it is meaningful not just for education and outreach, but to the investigators that are looking at it as well. So we, in our insurance projects, we would use these photographs. And this was back in the mid-90s when we didn't have the best in the world of cameras, which we all now have. But we would use this, and we asked the Senate Banking Committee, and we asked reporters, which home is in the black neighborhood? And because of people's stereotypes, they would study these homes very carefully and make an assumption that this one was not as well maintained, so it must be the one in the black neighborhood. But they were wrong. And using this comparison made people think about their own stereotypes. And this is something back in the day when we were doing the insurance testing, where we actually put information on the slides about the test results and investigations. So now we have better equipment, we use things better, we use a good JPEG, and we really encourage you to use as much evidence and photographs that you can, so that it's not just the reporter talking head on TV, it's showing pictures. So the other thing we do is to try to show the actual neighborhood that's adversely been affected by discrimination. The general public has stereotypes, and they have stigmas about certain neighborhoods based on their racial composition. So you're able to take the disparaging comments they hear about these neighborhoods and show them the reality. So for example, in Denver, well, I think this is Aurora, just a suburb of Denver, we recently used this property in our post against Bank of America. And we were able to show that we looked at this property from February to August of this year, and how the condition of the property not only stayed the same, but got worse. And you can see here, this is a foreclosed property that Bank of America is supposed to be securing, maintaining, and preparing for sale. So when we looked at it again in August, the front window was completely broken out, and the backyard looked just as bad, but now people had gotten in and vandalized parts of the property. The contrast here is, who are the neighbors? And when you do this juxtaposition of this poorly maintained home being next door to these well-maintained homes. It had a huge impact. And too often we don't take the time to help erase the negative stereotypes that people have about neighborhoods of color. And this is, our REO investigation is one good way we've been doing it. For the education and outreach staff, too often they're led out to a bunch of wolves who are going to ask them questions, details about the industry that they may be unfamiliar with, and they don't know how to respond to those questions. So earlier when I was saying you have to send staff to these classes, it's not just the investigative staff, but the education and outreach staff. The huge goal is to teach the community to recognize and report discriminatory housing practices. Those fair housing centers that get hundreds of complaints a year do a lot of education and outreach. All of you know on this call about NFHA and HUD's materials that over the years we've created together. And those include the print advertisements, TV, radio, PSAs. But in addition, you need to create actual news stories with your clients. If you're not familiar with the short videos that Bernie Kleiner has produced, you can email Diane and Cheryl Foss-Brown and we can get you lists of those. And the other thing is that you all should appear regularly on TV and radio. These are just some of the posters that have been developed over the years for steering. And when you're creating an education and outreach campaign, you have to know what your audience will relate to. With homeowners insurance, we found out that people love their insurance agent, but they don't like the company. So this used to say, tornadoes don't discriminate, but what about your insurance agent? That didn't focus test well. So we turned it around, what about your insurance company? So illustrating the impact of real estate sales issues is very important. And using actual evidence from your investigations is useful. For example, this is a map that a young white real estate agent gave to the white tester. And the real estate agent drew these red lines around the neighborhoods where the white tester should look to buy a home. And the arrows that he drew on here were, he would say, it gets blacker when you go this way. So this is a piece of actual evidence that we used. But then we took that information and created another map, a racial demographic map showing where the African American population lives in New York, in Brooklyn Heights, and where the red lines he drew on the map existed. We also showed where the offices of the Corcoran Group were located, here, here, and here. Nothing in the predominantly African American part of Brooklyn. So you can take evidence, transpose it, and have it even have a greater impact when you show this information side by side. Because again, not all reporters understand what their communities look like demographically. This is interesting because in our Detroit case, we, again, like in our foreclosure cases, we're showing people what a neighborhood really looks like. And when we held this news conference, we showed these homes in East English Village in Detroit and said that no white people were marketed any of these beautiful homes in this neighborhood. Then we did the contrast. But what did white buyers see? Well, they saw this nice home in Grosse Pointe, but whites were also marketed this home. Again, the juxtaposition of showing this kind of property when these beautiful stone and brick houses were available has an impact on the viewer. And remember, those viewers can always be potential jurors. How do you talk about the impact of segregation? I think, first of all, you have to convince your audience that it's not a thing of the past. When we talk about rental discrimination, sales discrimination, mortgage lending discrimination, people think redlining and those kinds of practices happened back in the day. And yet, almost every initial contact we make today is through a modern way. It's not walking in the door. We call people or we reach out to them via email. So you need to talk about linguistic profiling. And this can be a sensitive discussion when you're doing an education and outreach program, and it's sometimes even harder when you need to condense it into a radio or television discussion. But with linguistic profiling, what we talk about is Dane Archer's first study 30, 35 years ago, where he would put a person in a room and blindfold them, and then have another person come into the room and simply count to 20. The blindfolded person could guess the person's race, national origin, age within 5 years. And Dr. Archer said, how do you do that? And the person didn't know. So when you talk about linguistic profiling, you talk about the fact that our brain filters everything constantly. That just because we're talking to someone and we guess their race or national origin or age doesn't mean we're prejudiced. It means that our brain is functioning. It's filtering information coming in. It's what we do with that information that gets us in trouble. So when you approach people with linguistic profiling in that format, you're not calling them bigots. You're saying, your brain is just working. Good. We all filter information. That doesn't mean we guess right. We all know friends who will say, I can sound black when I'm on the phone, or I know how to sound white, and get treated differently for that. So we all have an accent. Everybody has an accent. And when you're talking to a group of white people, you have to remind them they have accents. And oftentimes that makes them laugh. If you can show the accent video during a presentation, that really brings it home in an amusing but poignant way. So linguistic profiling is a fact. Doesn't mean you guess right, but our brains simply filter and do profile. Then there's been some research, not enough, about the impact of a person's name or the email address they use. And here at NAFA, when we do our investigations, we try to use names that people would identify by race or national origin. And this research done by the two professors here at the bottom of the slide talked about names having inherently stereotypical impacts on people by the words that are used. My name is Shanna Smith, a woman from Birmingham, Alabama, who we filed a HUD complaint against, called me and was complaining that we had filed the complaint. And as she and I were talking, she explained how her daughter has black friends and she wouldn't discriminate, and she can't tell people's race by their phone voice because, after all, she said, you sound white to me. And I said to her, that would be because I am white. So she took my name and the work I do and made a presumption that I was African American, but I didn't sound African American to her. So when we use names, and when you're using your testers' names, and when you're talking to a large audience about names, you need to say that people do have stereotypes about names. And in this situation, they used Patrick McDougall, Tyrell Jackson, and Saeed Al-Aman. And while Patrick got the most positive responses, the fact is Tyrell got more rejections than Saeed. And this was conducted out in the LA region. So in education and outreach, when you're talking to groups that are immigrant groups, Russian groups, people who are Latino, people who are African American, you need to talk about how their names may trigger a discriminatory response when they're looking for housing or a mortgage loan or getting interest rates on a mortgage loan. And you should alert them that if they feel they're just not getting enough information or they're not getting a call back, even though someone was nice and friendly to them, they ought to call you. And because it could be their name or their email address that is triggering a negative response. We also do a lot of discussions about local and national research. And you have to target this information to the audience that you're speaking with. And I'll shortly show you some of the materials, or I'll give you information about the materials for teachers. We sent out 10,000 packets to 10,000 high schools across the United States. And in September, all of the NAFA's operating members received a copy of these packets for teachers to use for high school students to learn more about fair housing and housing discrimination in the United States. And there's a Spanish edition as well. We also included, we're following up with a postcard to have the teachers let us know if they used it. If they didn't, why aren't they using it? If they are using it, what did they find useful? We included a flyer that we made copies of and gave to the teachers as well, the one-page front and back in English and Spanish about fair housing, so the students could take it home and the teachers wouldn't have to make copies that they would send home with their students. We're doing this because so many young people can talk to their parents about housing discrimination. With 3 more million homes coming on the market in foreclosure, families need to have more information as they go out and look for housing, how to recognize discrimination. When you talk about schools and the segregation in schools, a lot of the research talks about poverty. And this particular research talks about how children behave differently based on being in an integrated school, not about their economic background. These bullet points are really sad when you go through them and see what this research has shown. It says when you look at white children when they're asked to give their interpretation of what images depicted, the white kids overwhelmingly felt that if the perpetrator had bad behavior, it would be a black child doing it. Children from predominantly white schools were more likely than their peers at racially diverse schools to affix those negative attributes to black children. This is the kind of information when you're talking to a predominantly white group that you need to share. Most whites, when they've responded to surveys, have said they want to live in an integrated community. If they live out in the suburbs, that doesn't mean they want to move into the city. It means they want people of color to move into their neighborhood so their children have that opportunity for racial and ethnic exchanges and cultural exchanges. But if they don't do something positive to encourage people of color to move in, it may not happen. When you find these suburban communities who want to be integrated, this is when you're doing your education and outreach that you can recruit people to become testers for you, to find out if people of color are being marketed that neighborhood or being steered away from that neighborhood. And then you're creating diversity advocates right in that community. And those homeowners who live there, as you all know, can have standing to sue under the Fair Housing Act if people of color are being steered away from their community. But again, as the education and outreach coordinator, you have to be familiar with the Tropicante case out of San Francisco. You have to be familiar with all the real estate cases that came out of the Chicago area in the 70s, so that you can explain how the city, how the neighborhood, how the neighbors have standing to bring a complaint under the Fair Housing Act when they really want to promote racial integration and inclusive communities. So there's a long list of people and groups that we should meet with on a regular basis. Educating elected officials is completely different than lobbying. Lobbying means you're lobbying for a particular bill that's before your city council, your state legislature, or Congress. But educating officials is extremely important, and you need to be issue-oriented. When we think about educating elected officials, one of the most important things to them is tax revenue and what's having an impact on tax revenue. We want to look at how the foreclosure crisis is affecting revenue coming into the city and the county. What is that impact? What impact is it having on schools? In the D.C. metro area, for example, and out west, you have a lot of environmental and smart growth people coming together to build more dense housing. But are they building dense housing and excluding people who are low and moderate income, or excluding the use of Section 8 certificates and vouchers for people to live in this new housing? One of the things that's extremely important is to have the constituents who've been harmed reach out to your elected officials. So you have clients, and one of the most successful situations I can think of came out of Fresno, California, when a white father of 4 couldn't find housing because of his number of children that he had. And he called the city, he called other groups in the area. No one helped him except the Fair Housing Center. And when it came time for the Fair Housing Center to have a public hearing on its funding, because it had not gotten a penny from Fresno's Community Development Block Grant Fund, this gentleman went to the hearing. And he had also been elected Father of the Year in Fresno, California. So members of City Council were quite familiar with him. And he talked about how the only help he got was from the Fair Housing Center. And they gave the Fair Housing Center, it wasn't much, it was $35,000, but that was a foot in the door to get the local elected officials to become familiar with what the Fair Housing Center does. There's nothing wrong with helping a constituent write a letter when you've provided support to them, or you've helped them get their complaint resolved and they have housing, or their children are not being harassed anymore. Education and outreach staff, along with the executive director, should be meeting with the mayors, the congressmen, senators, state and local legislators at a minimum of 2 times a year. And again, it's about educating them about what is your organization doing? Where's your money coming from? If you're in a conservative state, they still want federal dollars to come into their state rather than going to another state. You should send these member elected officials, all of them, copies of your e-newsletters and news releases as you do work. And finally, you should go to the town hall meetings. as fair housing advocates in education and outreach, you have to have your face out there. And that means going to the community development block grant hearings, attending the state real estate commission hearings, particularly when they're having a housing case. Look at the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights and comment on their reports. Do you know where your tax credit properties are? Have you met with the owners of those tax credit properties? Who should be testifying? Well, generally it's the executive director and a board member, but an education and outreach coordinator is an excellent person to testify as well, because you've met all kinds of groups of people. You know the pushback against fair housing in your community. You can even use some of the hostile statements or phone messages that your organization has received to show people that there are still people hardcore, heels dug in, opposing fair housing, as well as then, of course, showing who supports you. And this is just a short list of representatives that ought to write letters to the editors, write to your city council members, your county commissioners, to support you and support funding of your organization. It's very important to engage law enforcement. Across the country, since 9/11, there's been an increase in harassment of people who are Middle Eastern or people who people mistake as Middle Easterns, like Sikhs and people from India being harassed. And every education and outreach coordinator, as well as enforcement staff, should introduce themselves to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the community service officer, if they have it in your region. So, for example, Chicago has a community service officer stationed there, but in a smaller city there wouldn't be one. But your U.S. attorney can tell you who serves your region. And if there are instances of harassment, intimidation, threats, violence, the community service officer from the U.S. Attorney's Office is very valuable. A lot of fair housing centers don't take the time to meet with the local FBI and the police chief in their area or the sheriff. And again, it's important to have that face-to-face meeting with them and ask to provide training to the officers and to the FBI agents about the Fair Housing Act, how these activities can be criminal violations under the Fair Housing Act. And you're educating law enforcement so when they come across this issue, they can refer the victim to you, and you can do a further investigation. Your Fair Housing Center and your education and outreach person should be the one that the media goes to first when there are housing-related issues. Even if they're making a mistake and they're bringing you a landlord-tenant issue, it's good if you're the first organization on their mind, because you can make an appropriate referral. If it's a landlord-tenant issue and you have that kind of agency, you refer them there, or you refer them to the legal services. But your Fair Housing Center and the executive director and the education person ought to be the go-to person. A few of the Fair Housing Centers use cable access and run the Bernie Kleina videos and the HUD NFHA PSAs regularly. But very few people have regular meetings with local reporters who cover housing, business, finance, and schools. Because if a school is closing in your area, and many public schools are closing, oftentimes there's a disparate impact, and they're closing schools in neighborhoods of color. And you've got to start saying, what's the fair housing connection there? Why are these schools being closed, and where are these children being bused to or having to walk farther to go to school versus the other schools? In the financial reporters, Many of you are dealing with foreclosure prevention. You're dealing with loan modification issues. If you talk to that financial reporter, you can get a story written about how this bank, every time you send them information for a loan modification, it seems to get lost. So find and cultivate those local reporters, whether they're television or print or online reporters, to start getting these stories written about the problems and the intersection of fair housing with rental sales, lending, insurance, schools, how businesses operate, what businesses are closing. How is gentrification having an impact on businesses in neighborhoods that used to be predominantly African American or predominantly Latino or predominantly Asian American? There are fair housing hooks to all of these stories. Oftentimes, the fair housing centers will do sort of the undercover investigation and allowing a reporter to shadow them. That's extremely useful because now you've cultivated a reporter who understands how an investigation is conducted and will do follow-up stories with you and will follow your work and cover additional stories as they crop up. Many of you already appear regularly on local public service programs, both TV and radio. But if you haven't been on during a year at least 3 times, you ought to figure out how to get yourself in that cycle so that if there's someone who drops out at the last minute with one of the local public service programs, they know they can call you because you always have something going on in your office that will make a good story for them. We often have people write articles for the African American, Latino, and Asian American press. So if you have local newspapers, local online stories, you should be writing articles for them to appear in these newspapers. And one of the ways to help get them to work with you is use your education and outreach money to buy ads. And you can negotiate 2-for-1 and 3-for-1 ads. So you pay for 1 ad and you get 2 free. You pay for 1 ad, you get 3 free. So that your information is always popping up in the African American, Latino, and Asian American newspapers. With so many people on the line, I want to say, how many of you write articles for the industry press and their e-newsletters and for their websites? Your news releases ought to go to the industry as well. Sometimes we just send it to the media, but remember your news release can be picked up in the newsletters and on the websites of your local industry. And every once in a while, you can figure out if you want to give an exclusive story to a reporter who will do an in-depth investigation and do a great first page, second section, first page story about what you're doing. And letters to the editors are invaluable. Many of you know that NFHA will help people put together letters to the editor on major news issues going across the United States. And in the Dallas Morning News and the Cincinnati newspaper and the Miami Herald, they've carried these editorials that are signed by the local Fair Housing Center executive director. And you should stay on top of blogs. If blogs are talking and supporting the work you do, you want to have comments on those blogs. But of course, there are those extreme bloggers that it's best not to engage in at all or engage with at all. And we talk about speaking everywhere all the time. I think at a minimum, fair housing organizations, at a minimum, should be doing 12 education and outreach programs a year. And that's at a minimum. Most fair housing centers should be doing 20 to 30, 35, 40. If you are in a big city, it should be in the hundreds of where you are doing education and outreach programs and what groups you're talking to. Housing counseling groups are really very important to speak to because they can bring you lending cases. They can bring you real estate steering cases. So they need to understand what the law says and does and how it operates so they can teach their clients and they can listen when their clients are talking to them and make appropriate referrals. Group homes, groups that help the homeless are very critical. Back in the day when I was in Toledo, we had just trained a group that was helping people who were homeless find housing. And during the training, they told us that there was this huge apartment building who always asked them, oh, is the person you're sending over black or white? And the counselors didn't know that was against the law. And once they did, and the next time it happened, they called and told us. We did a test, not saying we were from St. Paul's, and we found that this 6-story apartment building that had 2-, 3-, and 4-bedroom apartments refused to rent to African Americans. The settlement through a HUD conciliation included $8,000 for St. Paul's, but better yet, it gave them, I believe it was 4 3-bedroom units rent-free for 4 years that they could place their clients into. And when you do that kind of education for the social service group, they can recognize discrimination and then report it to you. The same thing for the clergy. I think it's useful to attend church services, go to the synagogue, see if there are after worship services, gatherings where you can speak, because you can talk about discrimination based on your religion. You can talk about discrimination in general and how to recognize and report it. Plus, you get the clergy supporting you when you go before city council, county commissioners for funding. And when you work within that clergy group, it gives your fair housing organization a certain amount of credibility with elected officials. These are other groups that you should regularly speak with. The Mortgage Bankers Association generally has monthly meetings on the local level. For the Board of Realtors, many of you are already certified to do their 3-hour continuing education program for fair housing. If you're not certified, you should get certified. And you get certified by the State Real Estate Commission, and then you can provide this training and you can charge for this training. The same thing with the Apartment Association. And you should look to see if you have the Realtors, NAREP, NARAB, and ARIA in your community, the Asian American Real Estate Association, which is the national trade group, and meet with them. What's interesting is that these 3 trade groups representing African Americans, Latinos, and Asian Americans signed on to briefs supporting disparate impact. When the National Association of Realtors wouldn't do it, these 3 huge groups became involved with the National Fair Housing Alliance and supported disparate impact because they recognize discrimination. So you need to speak and meet with these real estate agents regularly because they're the ones who are going to be able to tell you where racial steering is occurring, where they can't get a listing. When they go to get a listing, the person goes, oh, yeah, we've changed our mind, we're not going to sell our house. And then next week they see a white agent has the listing. They can tell you that, and then you can do testing to see if that white seller who listed with a white real estate agent intends to deny people of color the opportunity to purchase their home. Some of these groups can be difficult to talk with. And I think, let me see if it's the next slide. There's a slide where we're going to talk about how do you deal with a hostile audience. VFW groups can sometimes be supportive. Other times they may be very angry at the government and see you as a problem because you're funded through government funding. Attending neighborhood meetings. In the D.C. area, we have advisory commissioner, advisory neighborhood commissions, and the city is divided up according to all of these different ANC groups, and they meet regularly. In your communities, you have neighborhood associations that meet regularly, and you should get out there and talk to them, particularly if they're condo association or homeowners associations. You go out, you educate them about the Fair Housing Act and their rights and duties under the law, and then if they ultimately violate the law with their condo association policies or their homeowners association policies, you've already educated them, and that puts your Fair Housing Center and the person they may discriminate against in a position to acquire punitive damages, because they knew or should have known better than to do this because you already provided that education. It's important to document all of your education and outreach. If you can do sign-in sheets, particularly when you're training the industry, because nothing would be better for you sitting in a HUD conciliation or in deposition to be able to say, have you had fair housing training? And they say no, and you have a list and say, oh, no, you were at this 2-hour training that we did on this date. So you knew better than to engage in discrimination, and you actually knew that by doing this illegal practice, you were going to harm somebody. So document everything that you do, and when you do it with the industry, get people to sign in. I'm sorry, we already talked about law enforcement. So this is very near the end, and then we're going to open it up for 30 minutes for questions and comments and for people to share any of their ideas. It's how do you address aggressive questioning, bigoted remarks, or an audience who gets angry with you. I've been asked this so many times, why should blacks have special treatment? Why does the law get passed for them? What's going on here? And we talk about the Fair Housing Act being the policy of the United States, that no person shall be discriminated against. But also talking about the fact this law wasn't passed for black people. Black people know they have a right to rent and buy houses. This law was passed to tell everybody else that they must respect a person's right to purchase housing. Lately we've been hearing, without people saying who they're talking about, saying, well, they have too many kids. They should learn to speak English. We don't want them in our neighborhood. And this is where the history of your own community is really important. Who are the immigrant populations originally in your city? Did they all speak English? I'm from Toledo, and there's a huge Polish and Hungarian community in Toledo. And my grandmother didn't speak English ever. When she died, she still hadn't learned English. But the Catholic churches in the area were teaching the Polish people and Hungarians how to speak English. What's really happening? Remind people of the history. When people first come into the United States, learning a new language can be difficult. How old are they? Are their children learning the language in school? Are they assimilating? Because we all think everybody should assimilate, but there's still that culture that people want to maintain. So look at the history in your community. Who lived there? Did they speak English? What generation learned to speak English? You can still go into communities in Chicago that everything's still written in Polish. And people will talk about Asian Americans coming in and seeing things written in Chinese and complaining that, oh, that doesn't make me feel welcome. So you have to talk about what is the history there. Everybody can live wherever they want, but who's welcomed. And it's not unusual for us to get comments from white people in our audience saying, don't I have a right to live in a white neighborhood? And, you know, the answer is sure, you know. If you can find that white neighborhood, and then you can go back to the maps and say, yeah, there are white neighborhoods, but if that's where you choose to live, you can't do anything to discourage or impede a person of color's right to move into that same neighborhood. And then we have people who will say, I don't want integration. African Americans have said to us, you know, it was better for blacks when it was segregated. Wade Henderson, who runs the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, grew up in D.C., and he said there were no good old days of segregation. You might think that things sounded better back then, but you weren't allowed to ride the bus. You weren't allowed to go into other neighborhoods. And when they talk about the schools being better, there were great teachers in those schools because the teachers who had PhDs were not allowed to teach in the white colleges. So you have to know what the history is, and you have to be able to talk to people about it. Gentrification is a huge issue in many, many cities across the United States now. And people will say gentrification supports integration. I say, yeah, usually for 3 minutes. And then you see a community flip. Washington, D.C. has changed from when I moved here being almost 70% African American to being 49% African American today. And that gentrification is moving people out block by block by block. And as the National Fair Housing Alliance, we're going to start doing our own investigations because being headquartered here, we cannot tolerate seeing a city flip as quickly as the city is changing. So we're going to open it up, and Diane, do you want to tell people, I guess, how this works, that they can write their questions? Diane has to take her phone off mute.
Right, I'm sorry, I was on mute during your presentation. A few people have sent in questions using the questions toolbar, and for those who haven't, we do have at least 20 minutes for Shanna to answer questions, so please continue to send in your questions. Cheryl Frost Brown is on. She's our Director of Member Services. And Cheryl, did you want to ask the questions that you see that are most significant?
Okay, she's pulling these questions up for me now. Diane, do you just want to read some to me?
Sure. One question is from one of our members. How or will we get a copy of the classroom poster, lesson plans, etc. that you mentioned, because they seem like they would be a good outreach tool?
Well, first of all of NAFA's membership has received these posters already. So there should be posters in your office. For people who are on the call who are not NAFA operating members, you can email Cheryl Frost Brown at our office, and we can send you a set of posters, and then you can let us know, well, we really like these because we have 10 more of these particular posters, and we can get that in those documents to you. Some things are also up on our website that you can go to and download and print out yourself and print more of them in color. For Bernie Klein's information, if you are looking for those videos, which are excellent, you can email Cheryl and she'll get you a list of Bernie's videos and how to reach him in order for you to purchase those videos.
Cheryl's email address is sbrown@nationalfairhousing.org, and I will send it also as an answer so that everybody has it in writing. Another question is, isn't fair housing training a requirement for realtors and other housing industry experts such as brokers?
You know, it's a state requirement, but not every state has the same quality of requirements. So you have to see what the agenda is by that state. Too often they'll use a defense lawyer to do their training, which kind of leaves a bad taste in the mouth of the real estate agent being trained. It's sort of like the got you. These fair housing centers are just out to catch you. They're going to measure if you offer them coffee. They're going to measure if you take them to lunch. And none of those things are what we do. So while most states, there are a couple of states that don't require it, but while most states require it, what you need to do is ask your local board of realtors to sponsor you to become a certified trainer. You then have to provide them with a very detailed outline of what the training will cover, the timeline for that 3-hour training, and then get it approved by the State Real Estate Commission. And then you'll be certified. It doesn't certify your agency. It certifies that particular person who has who's available to do the training. We have a question about how do you address aggressive rhetoric that never directly mentions race or national origin. Instead, they talk about overcrowding or traffic patterns or heavy impacts on the school. That often happens if there's going to be affordable housing built in that community. You know, I think you have to talk about who the residents, you have to bring it up as the race issue or the national origin or the kids issue. You have to say, as the Fair Housing Center, by opposing this, you're having a disparate impact on families with children. You talk about overcrowding schools. Yet children, you know, come whenever you have developments, children come in there, and children are protected under the Fair Housing Act. So you have to see who those occupants are going to be. Like if it's an all-white area and it's all white folks moving in, it's a lot harder to address it unless you're talking about families with children. But when you know it's going to be affordable housing and it's going to be integrated housing, as the Fair Housing Center, you have to raise it and say, you know, you may be thinking of it as traffic patterns or overcrowding the schools, but let me bring to you the civil rights point of this discussion and how you're eliminating the opportunities for people of color to live in this community. Then you bring out your race maps, you show them how white they are, and how you talk about what is the valuable, what is the value of living in an integrated community, and asking them what's more important to them. And, you know, you may still get aggressive feedback and they may not like it, but you have brought it up and you're explaining it to them. Diane, do you have any other questions?
Yes. Can you provide some examples of how to connect with municipal staff, such as planners, administrators, about their role and responsibility? Also, are there resources specifically for a private or nonprofit developer audience, such as a 101 on fair housing? I guess.
Well, let's do the first one because
sure.
The second I think you can answer, Diane, because we will be making some PowerPoints available on 101 training for fair housing.
That's right.
On the first part, what we usually do is just go meet with the planners, like the people who really do the nitty-gritty work in the planning department before we move up to the head of the planning commission. You want to talk to planners because they tend to be very progressive people. They look at smart growth, they look at density, they look at environmental issues. They will, when you have opposition for zoning and platting where people will come in saying, this shouldn't be converted to rental housing, a rental housing development here, it will hurt the impact of our neighborhood. If you're already talking to the planners, planners do a lot of the research to figure out what kind of impact it would have on the schools, on parking, on transportation issues. And if people start talking about traffic congestion, planners can say, well, this is why we need to have, more subways built or more buses available or more metro cars running during these hours so that it can accommodate the population in the area. But I've always found going right to the planners because they make the recommendations up to the Planning Commission is the best place to start. If you can get those planners on your side and understanding it and maybe telling you what kind of additional research they need, then when there's a hearing before the Planning Commission, you're prepared and you have planners who will support your position. Even though members of the Planning Commission may be opposed to it, you can ask a question and say, could you ask a planner how they feel or what their analysis is of traffic patterns? So you kind of go down to the people who are really doing the work first.
And this is Diane. NAFA is creating 5 PowerPoint presentations that will be posted, what we're calling a digital fair housing library. And they will be templates that you can customize to your local needs. For example, if you have additional protected classes other than the Federal Fair Housing Act, or other resources and connections. And so those will be posted, I think, in November, December at the latest on our website. And then next year, we will again start developing template materials, which again will be posted. So I will send my email address around as an answer right now, or you can write to Cheryl Frost Brown, who I just gave you the email address. If you have some specific topics for, and this question raises a very good one, how do we address the local planners, the municipalities? And we're also creating template brochures. So whatever recommendations you have for fair housing materials that, particularly beyond the traditional, and raising questions about addressing planners and administrators is a wonderful example of what types of materials are needed for the fair housing advocacy community. So you will receive notification when these materials are available on our website. And then in the meantime, please give us suggestions about additional materials that we can create and make available for the entire fair housing community. Shanna, I'll take a quick look and see. Okay, during the presentation, you mentioned different individuals and organizations that we should contact. What is the most effective method to contact them? For example, of individuals such as elected officials.
Well, generally with elected officials, you can call and make an appointment. And oftentimes with federal elected officials, they'll have you meet with a staffer, and that's just fine. You meet with the staffer, you go in with a packet talking about, that you'll leave with them talking about your organization. So if you have an annual report, if you have some news releases and successful settlements of cases, you'll put those into a packet. And then you also say to that federal elected official, if they have questions from constituents about housing, they ought to give you a call and reach out to you. With county or city elected officials, it's easier to get a face-to-face meeting with them. And again, maybe the first time you reach out to them, they'll have you meet with a chief of staff or a staffer. And again, you leave them a package, you talk about what you're doing. Then you find out their schedule. When are they speaking? Where are they speaking? Where's that county and city official speaking at? And you can go there, you can ask questions, you can plant questions in the audience that address fair housing issues, so that that elected official knows you're there. Then they'll say, well, you know what, I may not be able to answer this, but look, the Fair Housing Center's here. Can you take that answer for me? And you start building that relationship with the elected officials.
Shanna, another question is, have you had experience with online advertising or social media?
Oh, yes. Though my staff who do that could answer that much better than I. We blog and we tweet and we have a Facebook page. I think local fair housing centers ought to have a Facebook page, and you can get, you know, your testers, your board members, other volunteers to like you and ask them to send information around. Right now, I send things to my son and daughter who have a gazillion friends on Facebook when it's something about the National Fair Housing Alliance that I want a particular generation to know about or reach out about. The other thing with tweeting is that you can get, if you follow your local reporters, for example, and you send them information about a news release, a settlement, something important, they may tweet it. And when they tweet it, all their followers do that. That's happened to us several times from MSNBC reporters who will retweet our tweet, or they'll tweet about something we're addressing right now.
Another question, and I think you might have answered this partially with the previous answer, any tips for having press releases picked up and distributed by local newspapers?
Well, first of all, you need to, if you're going to have a news conference, and I think more fair housing centers ought to do news conferences when you file a complaint, you need to tell the reporters, do a media alert at least 2 or 3 days prior to the news conference so they can get on your schedule. And local fair housing centers, you know, the TV stations are always looking for something to cover. So if you do a news conference at your office with your client, with your attorney, talking about what's happened, you know, you're building that rapport with the TV station and the radio station, and you're also opening it up for other people who may have been victims of discrimination by that same apartment complex, by that same real estate company, by that same lender to come forward. Because if you wait till you settle a case before you do a news conference, you may have missed people who've been harmed as well. So when you do the news conference upon filing a complaint, you do have to be careful. You have to, you know, consult with your lawyers about how much you can say, what you can do. NFHA is very aggressive about doing news conferences when we're filing a complaint or when we're amending a complaint, so people come forward and talk to us. So do a media alert. You might want to, if you only have one newspaper in your city, sometimes you may want to give that reporter that exclusive story and get a big story written about it. Then the radio and the TV stations will pick it up as well. And the thing about print, whether it's on the internet or paper, is that they spend a lot more time describing what's happened. And on television, you know, you're lucky if you get 30-second coverage of your complaint. But you get more on TV if you can have the complainant speak, and if you can show photographs of the apartment complex or evidence from what happened with the tester.
Another question is, sometimes people come to trainings to learn how to, quote, get around the laws so they can discriminate. How do you combat that?
Well, in 2 ways. That's why we take attendance in the industry, because if they think learning about the fair housing law is going to teach them how to discriminate, they're wrong. When we teach the industry, we just give a very generalized description of testing. I don't tell them how we do testing. In rental testing, you know, we don't share with people that we have people pose as interstate real estate testers or rental testers. You know, you don't give them so much information on how you conduct your investigations that it makes it easy for them to get around it. What you do talk about is, what is the law? What have you found in the area? What have people's practices have people engaged in that have resulted in discrimination, like lying about the availability? So you give them examples of real cases in your service area and not how you investigated it.
Another question is, in our locality, almost all affordable housing is placed in predominantly minority-occupied, low-mod census tracts. Why? Isn't this racial clustering?
Yeah, every city is that same way. It's because when public housing was first built, it was built on a segregated process. The housing authorities have been sued over the years. Public housing and subsidized housing in the majority of the cities across the country are in segregated communities. You can't undo that now. What you can do is make sure that occupants of the housing are more integrated. So that's called affirmative marketing. So if you have, like, I'm from Toledo, and we had a 5-year housing plan in the late 70s, from 75 to, I think it was 77 till 82. And it was a plan to make sure all new subsidized housing was dispersed. And we were successful. It took us 8 years but instead of 5, but we were successful at making sure no zoning and platting was approved for low and moderate income housing in neighborhoods that were already racially concentrated. One of the ways you can address that now is working to make sure that the Section 8 voucher holders have more opportunities to move into neighborhoods where their race or national origin don't predominate. The wall you run into is fair market rent. But a city can petition HUD to increase the fair market rent, but they have to be able to document why that's so important. And because people who are low and moderate income of color are highly segregated, that's one of the issues that you can raise. HUD, the Office of Community Development and Planning, will have a mapping tool that will come out soon where you can actually plot where Section 8 certificate holders are living in the census tracts. And, for example, in the Chicago area, when HUD was illustrating it to us, we saw a bunch of Section 8 certificate holders in a predominantly white area. And that said to us that people of color with certificates could live in that area too, except for discrimination by the landlords accepting vouchers twice and not people of color. So the best way to address that historic discrimination is to see and create new ways for voucher holders to have more opportunities.
There's a question about federally subsidized supportive housing. How to address violations by federally subsidized supportive housing providers, or what is the best approach to educating them about their responsibilities?
Well, if they're discriminating, you file complaints against them. It should be as simple as that. And as part of a resolution, you can require them to have training. But subsidized providers, federally subsidized providers, have a duty to follow the Fair Housing Act. You can file a complaint with HUD. HUD can review it. You can talk to your local legal counsel about what evidence you have that discrimination is occurring and take action against them. Section 8 developers have been sued, as well as public housing authorities. There's a litany of lawsuits against public housing authorities for perpetuating residential segregation. And there are a number of Section 8 developers who have been sued, particularly in the Northwest Ohio area.
Well, I think we have time for one more question, and this is regarding outreach to local school districts. I have encountered problems reaching out to schools because generally any flyer or brochure must be approved by the school district. However, school districts and parent-teacher associations tend to disregard our requests. Do you have any other tips to reach out to schools?
Well, I think, again, you have to develop and cultivate a relationship. And some school districts are really picky about what can be sent home with children. So sometimes it's better to just reach out to the teachers who are teaching history, social studies, and see if they'll allow you to come into the class to speak. I used to speak to these classes routinely when I was in Toledo because the teachers during Black History Month, during Dr. King's birthday, during Hispanic, is it September? You know, would Hispanic Heritage Month would want people to come in and talk to the students. So oftentimes you may not get to the whole school, but you can get to the students in particular classes and give them something that they could take home. But if you can develop a rapport with the Parent-Teacher Association and you address it more on familial status issues, because obviously these are families with kids, and you know what happens when they're looking for housing, and address it through the kids issue and then layer on race and national origin issues. But once you start talking to them about what is immediately meaningful to them, so if we're talking about a white school district, what's immediately meaningful to them is, are their kids, you know, are the apartment complexes in the area discriminating against families with kids? Do teenagers get treated differently in apartment complexes? You know, what's really happening? Find out what their trigger point is, develop that one-on-one relationship, and then build it.
Well, thank you all for attending. This concludes our webinar today. Everyone who attended will get an email either tomorrow or Friday, and there will be a link that you can go to download the presentation. And we also ask if you'll just complete a brief evaluation survey of a handful of questions, because we value your feedback and always want to improve our trainings. Another webinar will be held on October 28th from 2 to 3:30 Eastern Time. And the webinar is, the audience for this webinar is fair housing advocates, but the topic is, how do you train condo cooperatives and homeowner associations regarding their responsibilities to follow the fair housing laws. Registration is available on our website at nationalfairhousing.org. If you just go to a tab on our homepage on the upper right that says Training and Registration, you will get to the page to register for that third webinar on October 28th. Thank you all for attending, and we hope that you will be back again to look at our website when our digital library is up and running, and we will send you announcements of any other trainings. Thank you very much. This concludes our webinar for today. And thank you, Shanna.
Thank you all.